Hi, and welcome back to Just Ask the Question. I am your host, Brian Karam. With me, a good friend and have been here once or twice before, Joel Rubin. Joel is, gosh, I could do your bio and be here for an hour. But let's just start with the fact that you're
Yeah.
a national security and foreign relations expert and a member of the Democratic Party and not a happy one.
Huh.
So let's start with that. That's that I'm just going to ask you the
Hey
question.
man, go straight into the jugular right now. Why not?
Why are you so angry at the Democrats?
Why am I still a Democrat?
Yeah, why are you still Karine Jean Pierre? Is she starting a trend?
I know I should write a book that tells everybody that I've been wrong for all of my professional life.
Yeah.
Um,
No pun intended.
so yeah, man, I've run a couple of times for a nomination in a Democratic primary for Congress, as you well know.
As I well know.
The moderator extraordinaire of a great
Thank you.
debate, and I lost that one to Jamie Raskin, which is a badge of honor. I'll tell you that much. Um, Look, I'm really frustrated with the party right now. I think that we all should be. I'm a proud Democrat. I have been my whole life. I believe that we offer, in a broad sense, an alternative vision and a proper vision for the country, or at least we used to. We need to. This is a two-party system. There is absolutely no way that we can have a third party gain power at any significant level in the national government. So we must have a strong Democratic Party and an alternative to this fascist political party that's overtaken us currently that we're going to talk about. And so that's why I'm a Democrat, but I'm really concerned about what we're doing to ourselves, how we're eating our own, how we're diminishing the value of young people in the party, even when they say and do crazy things that may piss off the established order, because they're bringing assets to the table, and that should always be seen as a value add. And so I'm really worried about that. And also, I got to tell you, last thing I'm worried about with the party is that the party does not seem to really want to unify in a way that is leveraging the energy and angst in the society right now. And we need to figure that sucker out. It's been done before. It was done in 2006 when we won the midterms. It was done during the Iraq War. It's been done. It was done during the first Trump administration. It's not being done yet, and time's a wasting.
Yeah, well, Tip O'Neill said all politics is local. And he said that, if you want to unify the party, you got to listen to the people in the local districts.
Yeah, man.
And I find the Democrats have a wooden ear. That's I don't know that. And to get rid of look, David Hogg you may not have liked what he brought to the table, but he certainly is a value added asset. And to me, the head of the Democratic Party is what's the word I want? Feckless.
I gotta tell you, but in defense of David Hogg, now I've never worked with David Hogg, but I have worked with and been around a lot of the young, exciting next generation Democrats who all grew up in the gun violence prevention movement, of which he is a card carrying member, right? A Parkland kid. I mean, this is the generation, this is the activist generation. They were there with us throughout the last 7, 8 years plus at organizing. If you look at the infrastructure, the apparatus of who is organizing the youth vote for the Democratic Party, all of them have deep connections to the anti-gun violence movement, the gun violence prevention movement. And so we need them to be the solution in the future. And so for David Hogg, look, he clearly had his own personal vision for what he wants. He clearly wanted to lead in a specific way. I can't say enough how important it is to have people who want to do that.
Yeah.
I ran in the Democratic primary, and I'm going to go long on this, but I ran in a primary, and, it's like you look around the talent, and the thing that the Republicans do is that after their primaries, they scoop up the losers and give them jobs and put them in roles. There's this guy, Sean Parnell, who lost in Pennsylvania, is now a spokesman at the Pentagon. They do these things to keep the talent moving. And when I looked at my primary and afterwards, I'm like, well, thank you very much, bye bye. Can you help raise money for us somehow or something? It's like it was very disconnected from. There was no like emotional bonding. So I'm still a Democrat, obviously, and I worked in the President Obama administration. I want to help us chart a vision on foreign policy. I can talk about that with you anytime, but
Yeah.
like we can't be pushing out our young, motivated, talented next generation.
I think we could push out the head of the DNC, and I'd be happy. But that's just me. I mean, look, David
I'll
Hogg.
let you say that. I won't go that far because I'm not a DNC member. But look, I will comment on this. I think it's a really troubling moment when the head of the DNC basically says behind closed doors that the reason he's having a hard time is because of one of his vice chairs. Like, we have a national threat to our democracy in front of us right now. That is the hardest thing that should be on his
Yes.
agenda.
That-
Everything else is like noise and their assets to be managed and figured out. Now, I hope he meant something different from what he said, but
oh, I think he meant what he said.
I'm still a
I don't.
diplomat.
I
Still
don't
a
think
diplomat.
there's absolutely no cloud on that. I mean,
But,
that's
like, let me tell you, Brian, what is the value in not having David Hogg be part of the Democratic operation, the machine? Who wins? The Republicans.
yeah.
This is not good. We can't push out our next generation of talent.
Yeah, well, so while the Democrats are
What we
imploding,
did.
yeah, well, and I agree with you. I mean, I don't know if I want to I don't know if I were in the Democratic Party hierarchy that I would want to primary the incumbents. But nonetheless, a young guy with the money and influence, you bring him in and you manage it. You manage your assets, as you said. And this isn't managing the assets. This is a whiny little bitch who doesn't like the fact that somebody spoke up against him. And that's how the Democrats come across to everybody else. You just look at them and go, Jesus Christ, I thought the Republicans were bad. But
We're not quite figuring out yet how to talk to the white guys, are we?
or anybody. That's you aren't figuring out how to talk to anybody.
Oh no, this is it's a real weakness, and it basically is reflected in the polling.
Yeah. So let's switch gears and talk about the the autocrat in the woodpile, and that would be Donald J. Trump, and in Los Angeles. Now, you wrote I love this piece that you wrote for your Substack, the briefing book. America is not the enemy, and why deploying troops in Los Angeles misses the real threat. So the question to you is, what is the real threat? You do spell it out here, and what are we missing?
Well, thank you for highlighting the piece. And if we needed any more evidence than today, I couldn't have come up with a better moment. Right now, American families, military service families, and diplomatic families are being authorized for departure from the Middle East because of rising threats right there of a potential war between Israel and Iran. That's the threat, right?
Yeah.
We have a military that's supposed to protect our country, that is supposed to ensure that CONUS, that the United States as a country is safe from foreign invasion, safe from foreign threat, safe from terrorist attack, you name it. By deploying our Marines who do not want to be there, by nationalizing our the state level National Guards and turning them into federal military officers, we are off mission. We are wasting it. Now, remember, we fought like all these forever wars in the Middle East, right?
Yeah.
And we got out, we got off cycle, we got dragged down. What was the common theme in the national security community? It was that by being dragged down and bogged down, we allowed China a window to rise and start to expand its influence. And you can go into this in a lot of different other examples. Why in the hell would we start to turn our military into looking at the American people as the enemy and as the people who this military should be policing and watching? That's not how our system works. So I'm very concerned that we are looking at the wrong direction. We're looking inward at the enemy within. We are missing what's happening abroad. There are so many international crises, Russia, Ukraine, you add to that. I mentioned already China, Iran, Israel. There are crises across the planet. why would we turn our attention inward with our military assets? We have so many civilian ways and methods and rule of law methods to deal with the question of immigration. And so the only answer I can come up with is that the president wants to do this intentionally in order to intimidate the American people who disagree with him politically and to intimidate other electeds, Congress, governors, judges, to try to essentially advance his form of governance through power and military pressure. And that is disgusting. It's anti-American, and it's turning the American people into the enemy.
Yeah, I mean, Governor Gavin Newsom came out and said he did a live stream and said that this isn't about protests in Los Angeles. This is about all of us. This is about you. California may be first, but it clearly won't end here. Democracy is under assault before our eyes.
Yep.
The moment we feared has arrived. There are no longer any checks and balances. You agree with that, or you think it's over the top?
Well, I agree with it. Look, he's declared war on California, but he's already made it clear, and Pete Hegseth, the SecDef, in testimony this week, made it clear that they've already gotten the green light to go to other cities around the country where there are not protests yet. They're searching for a predicate to go and deploy military assets around the country. And so when you add that, and you have in the background the letter of indemnification that the Supreme Court gave him last year by essentially saying any act committed in the name of national security by the President of the United States is legal, and the fact that he has unlimited power to pardon, and with these troops being federal, any act they do, he can pardon. They cannot be, they're not state level. They're different. He has that power. He has exploited and ripped apart the soft tissue of American democracy. It's the soft tissue. It's the values, the mores, the self-regulating code that all of our leaders have been governed by, that the rule of law and the laws of the land can't specify every single action of every person put in power in our country. The idea is that you honor the rule of law and the Constitution, and that you honor the separation of powers and the federalism, the state government versus the federal government. But it's always been available to exploit. This is the first president who's chosen to exploit it, and from a legal perspective, he has a lot of running room.
Yeah, but come on, you have to admit, these are activist judges, and Congress needs to give me what I want because I'm the leader. Doesn't that make sense?
Third branch, it's another branch of government, man.
Yeah.
I don't know what is wrong with these guys. Like, should I bring out I might have done it before. I have a constitution here. I'll bring it out again.
Yeah.
I actually have this. I actually think this is important. And you know who I got it? It's like from Cato. It's like the libertarian constitution. It's like actually true. Yeah. You know
who gave me mine?
Who?
Tip O'Neill.
Oh, damn.
Yeah.
That's a
this
collector's item.
Yeah.
That is an inheritance. And for so far, it still has value in there somewhere.
Well, let me just
it does have value. It has a lot of value. It's human beings. I'm sorry, I've just got to tell you. The brilliance of the framers is that they understood the weakness of man, and they understood that people, men in power, men at the time, but people in power have the potential to do dastardly things. And so the idea was to create a system through this piece of paper, this booklet of checks and balances and rules that would govern to limit unlimited power. And what is happening now is that Congress, the Republican Congress, is aiding and abetting the desire for unlimited power of this executive. And so then they're looking at the media and the courts as the other realms that could block them. And that's where they're attacking the courts so incessantly. And, the media has been under assault, as we've seen throughout. And so they're knocking down the blockages.
My argument is that media is complicit because they should break up the media monopolies, and it should be illegal for any corporation that owns news organizations to have other contracts with the government. Therefore, the government couldn't leverage those large companies the way they've done, the way Trump has done with large media companies today. But that is merely my rant. Going back
Argue. Yeah.
to yours, and I want to get to this before we get to the break real quick. Here's my question for you: what could be done? I've heard calls of national strikes. I've heard people say, "Hey, look, we won't even have an election in 2026." And I maintain we'll have an election in 2026, but if Trump has his way, it'll kind of be like a Russian election where the where the results will be known before time, and you won't have to really vote because you know who's going to win. All of that being said, what do you see as the Democratic Party is in shambles. The Republican Party is so far to the right that Genghis Khan looks like a liberal, and and Donald Trump is running pretty well unfettered across the country, and it's only 144 days into his presidency. So God knows what's going to happen in the next 1,318 days. So do you have a solution? Do you have a recommendation?
Yeah, and in fact, I have a lot of hope too, and I'll tell you, my hope.
So I have to have hope.
I have hope because I believe in the country and the Constitution and the American people, and I believe that there's a way to not let this overwhelm us, and it is to do what we're doing right here. It's to do what people are doing when they listen and watch this. It's to do what they're doing when they go and they protest, like No Kings rallies over the weekend, when mayors and governors speak up, because public opinion is not into this, right? The echo chamber within Trump's base might be to a certain extent. But I want to bring two streams together to this conversation, because when it comes to upcoming elections in 2026, I got to tell you, why wouldn't Trump want elections in 2026? Look at what he's looking at. They just kicked ass in 2024, and we're a shambles. We're a mess. So, like, from a Trump perspective, keep going, right? That's the legitimacy, the veneer of legitimacy he needs. If he were to prevent the elections, it would all be, bets would be off. And I don't think that's sustainable in
No, it
America.
isn't. You're
It's
right.
not even sustainable in Hungary, which is horrifying. So, but the way to deal with this is to deal with this the way we always have as Americans, which is to not take shit and to not take it. And
I,
that's just it.
yeah, I not. But here's my thing, and then we'll go to break real quick. Get up and vote. For the love of God, the majority of people still don't vote. I mean, if you look at if 60% turnout is considered a good turnout, I would only remind people that it would only take 30% plus one to be a majority in such an election, and that means a super minority, i.e., the Republican Party. The Democratic Party has the numbers. They remind me. The organization reminds me of a kindergarten class without a teacher. It's just like watching kids run back and forth and bitch at each other. So I don't know. We'll stop it. We'll take a break. We'll talk more about this on the other side of the break. This is Just Ask the Question. I'm your host, Brian Karam, and we will be right. Hi, we are back. It is Just Ask the Question. I am your host, Brian Karam. With me, Joel Rubin, who, yes, he mentioned in the first segment, is a former candidate for a congressional seat now now owned by our good buddy, Jamie
The
Raskin.
immovable force. Yes.
And I'll never forget moderating that. There were 9 candidates. And then who was it that came in at the last minute?
You know.
I don't even want to mention him because I always.
Total wine.
Yeah.
You know it.
He's the Democrats' version of Donald Trump. They have pictures of him, and I was out in L.A. at a Total Wine and Beer store, and there's pictures of him, and I'm going, I can't get away from this guy. And now he is in Congress. He should turn a little bit of his.
No, he's not.
That's right. He lost.
He ran for Senate and lost in his
Yeah.
primary, Angela. Yeah.
That's right. Yay! Anyway, we won't go there. Not a real Democrat in my vote, but in my book. But what do I know?
I got to tell you, that was for the viewers. That was at the time the single most expensive primary in the history of the United
Yes.
States.
And that's because
2015.
Kathleen Matthews was in it, right? And
Yeah.
she had spent a lot of money, and she was, Jamie always polled at a pretty level, even playing field. I mean, he was always polling about the same, and she was beating him, and then that guy comes in and split that vote. And I mean, if you was he a stalking horse?
I mean, hey, Nebraska can turn on the billionaire to get the seat. Don't say that to Jamie. He might not be very happy with that.
But Jamie has gone on to pretty good things in the
We
Congress.
love him. We love him.
Yeah, and one of the few people who stood up against Donald Trump. Let me ask you about going back to what you wrote. When you look at what's going on in L.A. What is? I mean, I have seen there has been, of course, some violence because there are crazies at every protest. But
Yeah.
I walked through the crowd in L.A. yesterday and the day before, and during the day, I mean, there were street vendors. There were workers out, scrubbing the paint off the sidewalks that had been painted on the night before, and none of the protesters were bugging them. And then there were, they were buying from the street vendors. They're screaming, peaceful protests and honest to God, give peace a chance, which I thought was hilarious, and I love that. And then at night, you have the crazies come out. Now, Donald Trump said that these are outside agitators and paid. Okay, if they're paid outside agitators, who does paying them to agitate and make it look worse benefit?
Yeah, that's an interesting jujitsu of logic there. Look, I mean, he can say whatever he wants. Where I come down on this, first of all, yes, there was hooliganism, anarchism, whatever you want to say, a bunch of punks who saw an opportunity to look really cool with flags waving and tires burning, and they made a mess of it for the 95%, 99% who were peacefully protesting out of deep concern over what was taking place with ICE raids. But where I come down on this from a national security perspective, and for folks, watching, listening, I served in the Bush administration as a civil servant at the State Department in military affairs. I served in the Obama administration as a political appointee, as a Deputy Assistant Secretary of State. I've worked on Capitol Hill and national security. And so I've kind of run the horn on these issues from the national security perspective in Washington. And I'm deeply troubled by the idea that the federal government should proactively take it upon itself to enter American cities to try to quell what it considers to be civil disorder. That is not its role. That is not the American military's role. At a very fundamental level, where does that end? There is no bottom line. They can come in with any justification that they want at any point in time. And to me, that is what we call monarchy. That is what we call autocracy.
Yes, that's autocracy, without a doubt.
It's
Well, all
not
right,
rule of law.
let's compare it to the last time the Marines were called out. The last time the Marines were called out for civil disturbance was indeed in Los Angeles in 1992 during the Rodney King riots. But those were legitimate riots with several $billion worth of damage, thousands of people it was widespread chaos. And the difference was the state requested the help.
That's it.
And that's, to me, that's a huge difference.
Can you imagine, Brian? I'm going to jump on this. Can you imagine if Joe Biden had decided to tell Texas that it was time to go into Dallas and put down the MAGA rallies that are taking place because there's a threat of potential disorder, and it's time for the American Marines to go in there? Do you think those Texans would have taken nice? You think Governor Abbott would say, "Sure, come on in," unannounced? The hypocrisy here on January 6th. So I have to say this, right? Where he literally chose not to federalize and mobilize National Guard assets while the American Congress is getting attacked by his own supporters.
Yes.
Right.
But all right. So
that's the reality of what it is. It's a political call. It's not about law and order. And this is the key thing to continue to repeat when you talk about how to deal with this. It's to not allow for the lie to be that law and order, it's collapse, and I have to go in. It's not about law and order. It's about political pressure and the use of the military for his political objectives,
Which is
which is to shut down and intimidate Democratic politicians in cities and voters, and to enact an extreme deportation agenda as part of his immigration policy, right? That's what it is about. And it's the anti woke, it's the anger at the BLM marches, it's the this week I have a military parade. This is like all the trappings of autocratic behavior, because at the core of an autocrat is a lack of
it's I mean it this is look, he has said that if protest his big beautiful birthday party, you'll be met with extreme force.
that's right.
And
So,
now, what the hell does that mean? I no longer have a voice. I no longer can speak my mind. I think you're a son of a bitch. I've got every right to say you're an
yes.
autocratic son of a bitch. I do not have the right to march on the street and start shooting people.
No.
That's the crime. But if
And
I
we
want to
have
yeah,
and we have
there are
police
statutes against that. Yeah.
and we have local police to manage and handle that. And we have state police to manage and handle that. There are 20,000 plus California state police. You think they can't manage to put down violence in the cities? What are we talking about here?
Well,
So
yeah, and that's two different issues. All right, so I've been in LA covering it. The police have had it under control. There is no doubt that they've had it all under control. In fact, you would, if you want to make the argument, in some cases it was too much control. I don't know what it would take to justify shooting a reporter with a rubber bullet, but I guarantee you going up live and having that done is not justification. You don't use unarmed people as if they're, moving targets at a shooting range. But nonetheless, so you could argue that the police have been, well, too strong there in LA. But here's the thing. That's a different argument than bringing in the military. I mean,
That's
if you want, the police have it under control. At no point in time has it never not been under control. It's been limited to 10 blocks the entire time this has gone on. And for the most part, I mean, look, there were people on one day of protest when Donald Trump is out there screaming and ranting and raving that it's under control and the streets are burning. I'm sitting in a coffee shop a block away from the protest with some of the protesters and the police, and they're just sitting there going, "Oh, I guess we're out of control." And I'm going, "Yeah, I need another espresso."
oh my God. So now let me add a layer to one of our favorite topics. Who do you think overseas is really having a good time watching this right now?
Oh, I think Russia and China both. Oh,
Glad. Yep, exactly.
and then
But
meanwhile,
in particular, this is the playbook, is to turn America on itself, right?
yeah,
The way to defeat America is pretty clear. You ain't going to beat us on the battlefield, certainly not in defending our homeland. But if
Yeah.
you can get our government to go after our people, well, that's
Its
a
own.
win.
You would think the Democrats would be in control because they're experts at eating their own.
And I got to say this to go back to the Democratic point. Regardless of the messiness that we are, it is an essential alternative, and it must be strengthened. And people must vote for it, even if we're not satisfied with it, because this is the result of not having Democrats in power. You have unchecked, runaway, self-aggrandized, authoritarian power that is now politicizing the nation's last revered institution, the military. He's overnight dirtying it up and politicizing it into policing Americans and doing a military parade in Washington, D.C., going to cost untold hundreds of millions of dollars for the parade and this deployment, after doging out Medicaid recipients, SNAP recipients, telling them there's no money for that, but there's money for this, right? This is what you get if you don't install the messy, disjointed, baffling Democratic Party.
Do you think there will ever be an accounting? I mean, Donald Trump will either die in office or escape to the Philippines. I don't know, after his time is up, or probably escape to Russia. But that withstanding, do you think there's anyone like, say, Stephen Miller who may face some justice for what has gone on? I mean, there is such a after World War II, there were you know, there were trials. That's war crimes.
I have to say, I'll put on my American patriotic hat, and I think the best justice is for them to get voted out of office and to lose power. Um, I will say also that, uh, the preemptive pardon is coming. If it's not already on the desk and signed, and it just hasn't been revealed, uh, you know,
Preemptive pardons will work for federal crimes, but not state.
not state. Yeah, Miller. He's an interesting character. I'll put on my Jewish political hat here because
Put on your
Miller.
Jewish. Before we talk about bomb Iran, put on your.
I'll put on my kippah, because I am a proud Jew, and I hope that that's still okay to say in public. Oh man, my people, it's been rough, Brian. It's been rough.
I'm telling
Um,
you, tough
oh
road.
man, no respect at all. All
Well,
right.
Steve Miller has no respect, but go ahead.
Man, come on, seriously, I know what is happening here. So his uncle gets out there and basically says he's a shonda, he's a shame and embarrassment to the family that without a good liberal immigration policy in America, refugee policy, he wouldn't even exist, which is true, right? Like Miller's family basically did what my family did, which was escape pogroms, genocide, anti-Semitism,
Mine too. Yeah.
things like trivial things like that at one time in America the American people were really happy to take in the victims and take care of them.
Give it
Quaint
you're
idea.
tired, you're poor, your huddle masses yearning to be free has
Don't
been
overstate
replaced with
it.
get the fuck out of here.
We don't want you,
Yeah.
but we want your
We want your money, but
we want your title, your huddle, your Afrikaners. I
yeah.
gotta tell you,
Those poor 59 people that have suffered genocide. Oh my gracious.
they really looked like they were physically maligned. So I was a Peace Corps volunteer as well for your viewers. And there's this great article written by a former Peace Corps volunteer. He was white, and he served in South Africa. He's like, how I survived the white genocide in South Africa. I rode the bus. I kept my door unlocked. I talked to my neighbors.
It's the only way I blended in.
For all these assholes, I'm sorry, I'm going to go off on this. For all these fucking assholes who hate people so much, who are different, people of color, people overseas, how about go overseas and live for a little bit and become part of a different community? Get outside of your skin, get outside of your life experience, become a human, become a citizen of the world. There is so much out there that's beautiful, and it's now reflected here in our country with our diversity, which is a good word. And it really drives me bananas to see the ethical tenor of this administration. This mindset is so hostile to the idea of openness and inclusivity and engagement and diversity. I don't get it. It really.
I get it. It's called racism.
Well,
What
there
it
you
is,
go.
is there's a lot of white fear. There's a lot of, and what they tapped into was to them, and I'm talking about in rural America, and God knows, I have in-laws, so listening to them, it's the fear that it won't be equality, that it'll be black people, brown people, Jewish people will all get over on the poor white farmer who's just trying to do his job and will enslave them. And and when they talk about anti-DEI, right? When you read what Donald Trump wrote, or didn't write but signed, the executive order, the anti-DEI order, he said America is a meritocracy and the best person should get the job. That's exactly what DEI was aimed at doing. The only thing that DEI said that Donald Trump didn't say is, hey, when you're considering everybody, you've got to consider everybody. Whether they're white, brown, gay, trans, the best person for the job. And Donald Trump has twisted that into DEI means preferential treatment for those people. And so that's where you see that he's gained a lot of followers by twisting the truth and making people think that it's about something that it isn't.
I mean, it truly is, whatever government policy or organizational policy that people choose to use. And And I will say, as a Jewish American, there are times where I do feel as well that I've been sort of blocked out and sort of barricaded from opportunities and kicked out of meetings, especially because I have a deep connection to Israel. And I will tell you that that's not a comfortable place to be in the democratic ecosystem these days. It's hard. It's challenging, but that's okay. That's life, you know. It was hard to be a Peace Corps volunteer in the middle of a Catholic village in Central America, and then you know what? It worked. And I think this idea that you must be me in order for me to like you. You must look like me, talk like me, have my same background. Otherwise, I don't want anything to do with you. And fuck you. That to me is so opposite. Not just like America, but opposite like being a good person.
Yeah, that's
You know? I mean,
so how
basic
dare
facts. Like, just be a good human. And so yeah, it's very disappointing. And I want to go back to the national security thing. I'll tell you one thing, just one last thing on this. I talked to guys who served. I talked to Marines. I've served actually. Unlike most of these guys, I actually served my
yeah.
time.
But you didn't
They
have
don't
phone
want to
spurs?
do. They don't want to do this. And you know what? The military is incredibly diverse. And it was for decades a vehicle for social mobility for Black Americans who were not allowed into the corporate boardroom and other, Colin Powell talked about this a lot. Like, this was like a great melting pot. And now it's being turned on its head and used. It's sort of like they're trying to turn into an oppressive force. And it's very, very damaging. And I think it's going to hurt morale. It's going to hurt readiness. It's going to hurt recruitment. It's going to hurt performance. It's going to hurt the skill sets.
It's going to hurt the
And
country.
that also has an impact on our national security.
Yeah. So we're going to take another short break, and when we come back, bomb, 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 Iran. Stick around. We'll be right back. Hi, we are back. It is Just Ask the Question, and I am your host, Brian Karen. With us is foreign policy expert, Democrat extraordinaire, and, he was a great candidate for Congress, and he lost to Jamie Raskin. Joel.
Loser!
Oh, no, don't go there. Joel Rubin. Joel, when we left, we were talking about, international policy a little bit. Let's talk about one of the problems, as a Jewish man, you've had problems, you were talking about the party now, the Democratic Party being a difficult fit. Part of that, I think, is because of some of the things that Bibi has done in Israel. Is it not, or you disagree?
I mean, I'll sort of give a little bit of a mixed response to that. Like everything, I'm a diplomat. But look, first and foremost, what I'm going to say is on the anti-Semitism in America right now. It's a live debate in the Jewish community about what to define as anti-Semitism, what causes it, what's happening. Like, we've had horrific incidents in the past couple of months. We had Governor Josh Shapiro's house firebombed. We had two young people shot dead outside the Capitol Jewish Museum. We had in Colorado a Holocaust survivor and others attacked for being supportive of the Israeli hostages. In a horrific anti-Semitic terror attack. And those are the obvious examples of the hate, but it's growing. So I don't blame Israel for the rise in anti-Semitism around the country. I blame the people who are engaged in anti-Semitism for the rise in anti-Semitism. We have had conflicts around the world for years. Americans have been in wars. When we go around the world, should we be attacked nonstop because our government is engaged in a war? Should we be persecuting every Sudanese American because of a genocide happening there? Should every Serbian American in the 90s have been screamed at everywhere they went, their churches barricaded, their public meetings attacked and harassed when they spoke? No. And so I find that the behavior, I'm sorry, I'll say this, I find the behavior against Jewish Americans and people who support Israel here in the United States is abhorrent. And
I think they conflate support for Israel. I think they mistake support for Israel with support for Bibi. I think there are a lot of people that just go with Bibi.
Let's be blunt. The Netanyahu government's policy towards Gaza is abysmal.
Everything that you've just said, I've heard Palestinian people say.
Yes,
and there are peaceful Palestinians who don't they just want to go about their lives and they don't want to be involved in this.
Well, the same thing. We should not
Anyway,
be
yeah.
after September 11th. We should not be targeting. And as a Jewish American and many Jewish Americans, we said no. Do not target the Muslim Americans, Arab Americans, the mosques. Palestinian Americans should not be targeted and harassed because they're Palestinian and they support Palestine. But I do think that just on the policy, we are in the abyss right now when it comes to the Israel, Middle East, Gaza situation. I think that Netanyahu's policies right now they're so unpopular in Israel too. 70+% negative on his policies. Just the other day, the two far right ministers of his government, Smotrich and Ben-Gvir, were sanctioned by Europe because basically they're calling for ethnic cleansing. This is a black mark moment on Israel in the Middle East.
United States. Isn't it odd that the two countries that have supported democracy the most are under these two leaders abusing it the most?
I think it's a little bit it's very different, but I in terms of like Netanyahu. I see now I'm going policy wonk. Yeah, it's just bad.
Yeah, it is. I mean, look.
How's that for an answer? It's just bad. Look, Netanyahu is to try to clarify the point. A victim are trapped, not a victim. He is trapped in a dynamic where, just like with Trump, the way to stay out of jail is to stay in power.
Yeah.
And so it's this moral hazard of behavior. He is, in his case, he is in many ways at the mercy of the far right because the far right comprises coalition, and if they leave, then his government collapses and court cases against him will proceed. So there's that, but also I have to tell you, in the long-term historic logic of the Likud party and its roots, this is what is happening now is not a surprise.
No, it's not. If you read this, it's there. Finally, let's end with this. When we talk about anti-Israeli sentiment, I think Donald Trump is using that as a red herring to go after Harvard and other institutions.
That's right.
And that is frightening to me because it misconstrues what anti-Semitism truly is. And free speech is not anti-Semitism.
Right. So this is when I say it's been complex. This is part of it. I'll give you two answers that may overlap and may not. One is I have deep concerns about Jewish students being harassed on campus.
Yes.
Even by speech, because that is targeted speech at them. That's hate speech. I do not have a problem with generalized protests and rallies and people protesting for a position. But when they are looking at people because of their religion and they engage them with verbal assault, that to me is harassment. And that I have a problem with.
Well,
but
okay,
to your point,
here's the First Amendment. So free speech includes hate speech. You can say you hate me. The line that you have to draw is when you say you hate me and therefore screw you, I'm going to beat you to death or something. That's harassment. There's legal precedent for that. But just to say, hey, I hate you, Brian, because you're a Lebanese immigrant, or good Lord, where do you want to go with me? Russian Jew, Lebanese immigrant, Catholic. I mean, go ahead. I've got. Let's see, how much African American in me? I mean, you can go after me for so many things if you read my 23andMe, and so I get it. Yeah, that's right. I don't know. Now I'm being cloned somewhere, I'm told. Who wants to? So, at the end of the day, the hate speech, just to say that you hate someone, but you're drawing the line with the harassment, and that is a legal definition. So, go ahead.
But this is where I want to pivot to the point, though, is that it's not as if the Trump guys were upset when Charlottesville happened.
No.
It's not as if anti-Semitic chants by their supporters were leveraged to go after those groups, right? And so what
Hey,
they're
it's true.
doing is they're using my pain for their political objectives,
They're
right?
using your pain for their pleasure. As massive as it's sadistic.
Woo! Well, now I mean, look, universities should be better. There should be discussions and accountability, but this is not what they're doing. They're literally trying to break up the other crown jewel. The military is one of them. The American university system is like a tremendous asset for our country. And it's got problems like any other part of our country, but they're intentionally trying to destroy some of the greatest
Any
institutions.
opposition, anyone who will say nay to them, they're trying to destroy. So that
It's
is why they go after education, the Democrats,
and
Republicans.
and
They
and,
want to
and,
bring
and
them.
maybe I know I'm going to say maybe this will get to something you're getting at with Bibi. What I'm worried about is this will boomerang badly on the Jewish community
I'm worried that
here, and
yes,
and forget about it from like Israel to the side, just from an American domestic Jewish community perspective, to be in a dynamic where institutions writ large are being punished so aggressively on the basis of a charge of anti-Semitism has the potential to really create major disconnects between the Jewish community and other groups and our allies. And I'm not sure how best to say that because I want to be sensitive in how I say it.
well, I think you
But
said it best earlier. They are turning us against ourselves.
I mean, this is the autocratic playbook. And just bring it full circle to national security. The autocratic playbook is divide and conquer, and it's not to unify and heal; it's to separate and incite. And so, right now, the Jewish community we're screwed, right? We're caught in the vice on the left and on the right. We're kind of like as I was saying to a Jewish friend the other day, I'm like, oh, so this is what it really is like to be Jewish now. Now I get it. Maybe I lived for the first 40 or something years of my life in a little
Brother,
blissful
this is what
moment.
it's like to be American right now.
But right at the end of the day, we're all in this together, and
Yeah.
I think as an American, that is the point, and that is how we get out of this. Just like to your question, we get out of this by sticking together, not by being divided.
That's a wonderful way to end too. I know you've got to take off. What do you want to plug, Joel? And I love having you around. We could do this all day. You got to come back.
I love joining you. Thank you, Brian. You're a breath of fresh air. Hey, folks, please follow me on Substack at the Briefing Book. And I'm excited to be engaged. I'll be writing a lot. I have been writing a lot on these kinds of issues. And just stay strong.
There you go. All righty. This is Just Ask the Question. I'm your host, Brian Karam. Thanks for joining us. We'll catch you next time.